Hello, Algebra 1. This is our final day of new material for completing the square, and today we're going to talk about solving by completing the square. Okay, first though, we're just going to do 2 review problems of converting to vertex form. So again, when you just have an x squared in front, there's not a number, you're going to move your constant over. So this will be y minus 8 equals x squared plus 10x. Take your b value, which is 10, divide by 2. Square it, that's a plus 25. Make sure you do that on both sides. Now we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So the negative 8 plus the 25 is a 17. And on this side, we're going to go ahead and factor this. Multiplies to 25, adds to 10. Again, it will always be this number right here. So that's x plus 5 squared because it's 5 and 5. And finally, we subtract our 17 over. And this is our vertex form. So that gives us a vertex of negative 5, negative 17, because again, we change our x coordinate, but we keep our y coordinate the same. And now I'm actually going to go to my calculator. And I have typed this into my y equals and graph. And this is what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is find the zeros. Make sure to find the zeros. You have your y2 equals 0, and I'm just going to do second trace 5. Enter, enter, enter. So my first 0 is at negative 0.88. And my second one, second trace 5. And, oh gosh, moving over. Okay, good enough. Negative 9.12. Okay, so we're going to come back to this problem in a little bit, but for now, on to number 2. So number 2, we have a number in front of our x squared, but we're going to start off the same way. Subtract your 42 over. But now I'm going to need to divide out that 2 in front. Okay, so 20 divided by 2 is 10x, and you're going to want to leave a space to complete the square. So now take your 10, we divide by 2, and square it, and that's a plus 25. Okay, but here's the tricky part about these. It's not really a 25, it's really a 50. 2 times 25 is 50, so that's what we're adding to this side. Combine your like terms. So that's a plus 8. And factor. Multiplies 25, adds 10. Okay, this is the same one as it was over here. It's an x plus 5 squared. And finally, subtract your 8 over. Okay, vertex would be negative 5, negative 8. Because again, we change the x and we keep the y. Okay, and I've typed this into my calculator and I have graphed it. And I'm going to find the zeros. Second trace 5, enter, enter, enter. The first one is at negative 3. Oh my gosh, my calculator is really slow. And negative 7. Okay, so now that was your review of the past 2 days. Now we're going to use completing the square to solve quadratic equations or find our zeros, roots, or x-intercepts. Remember, this is the same thing. So the difference here is that we don't have a y equals. We have an equals a number, usually an equals 0. So right now this looks like it's set up for quad formula or perhaps factoring. And we're going to show you how to solve this by completing the square. So we're going to start the same way as before. You're going to move your number over. So instead of a y, though, this is a 0. So we have x squared plus 10x equals negative 8. Okay, now we're going to complete the square with this side. All right, so your b value is the 10. Divide by 2. All right, that's 5 squared. And you may notice that this is the same problem from above, only with a 0 instead of a y. Okay, so that means I am adding 5 squared is 25. But when you do that, again, you've got to do that on both sides. So equals -8, add your 25 over here as well. Then we're going to factor, multiplies to 25, adds to 10. Again, that's going to be that 5. -8 plus 25 is 17. Okay, and now this is actually something that we know how to solve already. You have a squared here, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to root both sides. That brings down our x plus 5. Okay, we've done this in a previous unit. Make sure you have your plus or minus. Root 17, ordinarily we would try to break this down, but 17 is a prime, so we can't. So it just stays a root 17. And then remember, we're going to subtract our 5 over. But you can't combine a number and a root, so our answer is -5 plus or minus root 17. Now, this is an exact answer. It probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you until we come back and we type it in. -5 plus root 17 gives you -0.88. And -5 minus root 17 gives you -9.12. So essentially we have found the zeros that we found when we did by graphing. So that's pretty cool, right? So now notice that this next one is the same as number 2. So we should get the same answers ideally if we do this correctly. So again, start off, move your number over. So we're going to subtract over that 42. All right, and then you're going to take your number in front, you're going to divide it out, leave a spot to complete the square, take your b value, okay, which is 10, divide by 2, square it, so that's your plus 25, but again, here's where you have to be careful. It's not really a 25, it's a 50. So we're adding your 50 to both sides. Bring down your 2. We're going to factor. Again, this is that x plus 5 squared. -42 plus 50 is 8. Okay, so this looks a little different because you have that 2 in front. So what we're going to have to do now is divide by 2 on both sides. That gives us a 4. Now, since the squared is by itself, we'll root both sides. X plus 5 equals square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. And then finally subtract your 5 over. Okay, now remember, this is two answers. This is saying positive 2 minus 5, which is -3. And it's saying -2 minus 5, which is -7. And lo and behold, look, same answers as above. Okay, so now we're just going to try several different examples. Okay, so this problem looks similar to the one on the front, but it's actually a -8 here. So we will add our 8 over. Okay, and notice I left a little space to complete the square. So that kind of saves me a step. So take my 10, divide it by 2, and square it. That's a plus 25. Again, make sure you add it on both sides. Okay, now I can go ahead and factor this side. This becomes my x plus 5 squared equals 8 plus 25 is 33. And now I'm going ahead and I'm solving by square roots, just like I've done in the past. Square root both sides. 33 breaks down to an 11 and 3, but both of those are primes, so we can't really do anything with this. It's just going to stay an x plus 5 equals a plus or minus root 33, and then we're going to subtract our 5 over. So x equals -5 plus or minus root 33. And there you go, that's your answer. All right, let's try another one. We're going to do 2 more with just an x squared in front, and then we'll move to the harder ones. Okay, again, move your number over first, so I'm subtracting 10. If you want, leave yourself a space here to complete the square. Take your b value, 4, divide it by 2, square it. So it's a plus 4 on both sides. Factor, multiplies 4, adds to 4. Again, that's going to be this guy. x plus 2 squared equals, combine your like terms, -6. And then we would go ahead and root both sides, but you have a negative here. What does that mean? It means no solution. Okay, so essentially if you graphed this guy, what's going to happen is you're going to have a parabola that doesn't have any zeros. Okay, it doesn't hit the x-axis. Okay. All right, one more like this. Again, move your c value over. Leave a space to complete the square. Take your b value, divide it by 2, square it. That's a plus 16. Make sure you do that on both sides. Now we're going to factor, multiplies to 16, adds to -8. Again, that's this -4 here. So x minus 4 squared equals 4 plus 16 is 20. Your squared is all by itself, so we're ready to root both sides. And 20 is something we can break down. So we're going to go ahead and do a tree for this. I'm going to do 5 and 4, 2 and 2. And I have a pair of 2's, and the 5 doesn't have anybody. So my x minus 4 comes down. Don't forget about your plus or minus, and this will be a 2 root 5. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my 4 over. And that's just going to go in front. Okay. And there you go. That's your answer. All right, so now let's try some when you have a number in front. Okay. So again, you're going to move your c value over first, regardless of whether you have a number in front of x squared or not. Okay, but remember, we can't just complete the square yet. Okay, so I guess I really didn't need to leave the space here because we have to divide out our 3 first. So divide out your 3. This is plus 4x. Now leave yourself a space. Okay, take your b value, divide by 2, square it. So that's a plus 4. But remember, it's not really a plus 4 because you have that 3 there. This is a plus 12. Okay, we're going to factor. This becomes x plus 2 squared equals 6 plus 12 is 18. And now before we square root both sides, we're going to need to divide by our 3. X plus 2 squared equals 6. Now we can root both sides. But 6 just breaks down to 3 and 2, which are both primes. So this is done. You still need that plus or minus in front though, and make sure you have a root 6, and then we'll subtract our 2 over, like so. All right, let's keep going. All right, so let's go on to number 5. Okay, again, you notice you have a number in front of your x squared. You want to move your 6 over first. Now, don't worry that that's -6 right now. It might turn to a positive in a little bit. If it doesn't, then we might have a no solution case. But for right now, it's just going to stay like that. Divide out your 2. Make sure you leave a place to complete the square. Let's take our b value, divide by 2, and we're going to square it. Okay, so that becomes a plus 16. Again, you're going to have to add that to the other side, but it's actually a 2 times 16, which is a 32. Okay, bring down your 2. We're going to factor, multiplies to 16, adds to -8. That's this -4 right here. And -6 plus 32 is going to be a 26. Okay, so notice it's positive now, so that's all good. Remember, we're going to have to divide by this 2 in front. 26 divided by 2 is 13. And now we're ready to root both sides. However, 13 won't break down. It's a prime. So I'm going to come up here. That's just going to stay a plus or minus root 13. And then we'll go ahead and add over our 4. And there's your answer. Okay, for number 6, I have made an error. So we are going to change this problem to something much nicer. So voila, here is our new problem. So we're going to start by adding our 8 over to the other side. And then we're going to divide out our -2. We're going to factor this out. Okay, please be careful. And actually, one thing that you could do here, that's not always going to work depending on the problem. So I'm going to just keep going. Divide out our -2. So when you do that, -4 divided by -2 is positive 2x. Leave a space to complete the square, equals 8. Okay, take our 2, divide by 2, and square it. That's going to be 1 squared, which is just a 1. But be careful, it's not really a 1, it's really a -2 times 1. So we're going to counteract that by doing a -2 over here. Okay, we're going to factor, multiplies to 1, adds to 2. That's our x plus 1 squared, equals 8 minus 2 is 6. And now we have to divide by our -2. That's going to give us a -3. And then this is where our issue is, because our next step is to square root both sides. And we cannot square root a negative. So this is no solution. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is quadratic formula compared to completing the square. All of these problems that we have done have been fairly straightforward, and that's because our b value is an even number. But if b is an odd number, solving by completing the square can be way trickier. Okay, in fact, quadratic formula is definitely your better option. So let me show you. I have this problem here. It is just an x squared, so that's nice. I would subtract my 5 over. Okay, I'm going to take my b value. I'm going to divide by 2. The problem is that 9 divided by 2 is a 4.5. So now I'm going to square this 4.5. And that's a 20.25. Which I also have to add over here. Well, now, even though that's gross, we can still factor that, right? Because we know that it's just going to be this plus 4.5 squared. But then over here, you've got a -5 plus 20.25. That's a 15.25. And when you go ahead and square root this, it's just going to be really hard. Like, you're going to just be dealing with a lot of decimals. It's going to be pretty messy to work with, okay? It's not ideal. You can't really do a tree for this. So this is why, in general, we don't want to complete the square when your b value is odd, okay? Instead, if you had to solve this, you would want to solve by graphing or by quadratic formula. So let's look at quadratic formula here. This is something we've done previously. Our a value would be 1. Our b value would be 9, and our c value would be 5. So we would do x equals opposite b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then we would evaluate our discriminant here. I think that was right. Yep, which is a 61. And then this is not hard to type into our calculator. -9 plus square root 61 divided by 2. So we have a -0.59 or -9 minus square root 61 divided by 2, a -8.41. Okay, so I kind of already said this, but when b is odd, definitely quad formula is going to be easier because you're not going to deal with decimals until your final answer when you type it into your calculator. But when you complete the square and b is odd, you're going to have these decimals all throughout. You will end up getting the same answer. Okay, if I come back over here, if I square root 15.25, This is going to be plus or minus 3.91. Okay, and then you would have to subtract the 4.5 over. So if you look and you take 3.91 minus 4.5, you do get that negative 0.59. And if you take that negative 3.91 minus 4.5, you do get that negative 8.41. But again, it's just really gross. Okay, so you get the same answers, but it just is a lot more effort than it needs to be. All right, so odd b value, you definitely would like to use quad formula instead. Okay, all right, I hope that answered your questions, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.